Welcome to the Slip. Welcome to the Slip, an Atlanta sports podcast for the true ATLian. I'm your host, Brandon Baird. You can follow me on Twitter at Bairdian_slip. Today on the show, I'm going to be talking about 2 or 3 major things within Atlanta sports. I'll be covering the Braves, I'll be covering the Falcons, and I'll be covering the Hawks today. I know Atlanta United just started up with their training, so I may get to that in the upcoming weeks because I think with the new coach, they're starting a new era. We will see how that goes. But there are some very important things that's going on with the Braves, or not going on with the Braves. There's some very important things going on with the Falcons that happen. And then we have to look towards the Hawks, who seem to be doing something really good. I don't think they're getting enough credit from the city itself. I don't care about the other noise, but the city itself. So first, I'm going to start talking about the Braves. Okay, that's the team I know the most. That is the one that I watch nearly every single game. And we got to talk about something, Braves fans. We've seen very minimal moves over this time period and over this offseason. And a lot of people are getting a little bit worried. We need a starting pitcher. We need a left fielder. We need another outfielder. We need a new shortstop. All these things going through the fans' head. And, I hear people getting a little bit worried. Is Alex Anthopoulos going to do anything? Why is he just sitting back? There's so many moves being made. But we have to understand a couple things. We have to understand the budget as well as the people that's out there. So let's first talk about the budget, okay? The Atlanta Braves have gone over the tax threshold for the past 2 seasons. If they go over that threshold again, they're going to have to pay another tax on top of what their salary already is, their total salary already is. They don't want to do that right now. Especially, they don't want to do that if the player that they're signing isn't worth it. Okay, we know that they were in on Garrett Cole. That didn't work out. They wanted a lot more of our players. They were probably asking for Drake Baldwin, the young prospect catcher that did really well in AAA last year. I think hit over 30 home runs in AAA last year. They wanted him, and the Braves are saying, no, we're not going to give him up. And right now, the Braves farm system, it looks decent. I think it's better than what people are giving it credit for. However, there's some pieces that we would have to let go of that I don't think we should let go of in order to get a name that would need to be paid, or a name that we don't know if we can actually sign long term. I'm not a big fan of when the Braves acquire a person, or if any team acquires a person. I think it's just bad management if you give up all those prospects and then you don't get anything back in the long run. Okay, if you're going to get somebody that's good and worth all those prospects, then they need to be worth it the long term. Okay, so I think Alex Anthopoulos has been making phone calls to other GMs. I think he's been doing his thing, and just nothing has come, and that's okay. All right, so let's go over these other things, right? Acuna may or may not be ready towards the beginning of the season. I think they're leaning towards not going to be ready. I think he himself may be leaning towards not going to be ready because he does not want to rush into things like he did last time. He admitted in an interview shortly after his surgery, while he was doing his physical training, that last time he said that he rushed through it and he can feel the pain while still while still trying to get back. And he really wasn't himself until the next season where he won the MVP. However, is it actually worth it to go through that strain, going through that injury where you get that wear and tear on your body and you aren't performing to the best of your ability, as well as it could set you up long-term poorly because you're trying to rush into things and you may hurt yourself again. It's just not worth it. He is a guy that we want around for a long time, and I think his health is the priority rather than how fast he can make it back in the season. However, we still have to think about who's going to fill in that spot. We have Michael Harris, we have Jarrett Kelenic, and we don't really have anybody else. Okay, Marcell Ozuna isn't going in the outfield. We don't need any projects going in the outfield. We tried that with Wild Bill Contreras back in the day. I think that was 2021. We tried that with him. It didn't work. We even tried that with Orlando Arcia. It did not work. So there's a lot of outfielders that's still out there that we can sign for a little bit amount of money. We may bring Laureano back. Just because we non-tendered him doesn't mean that he can't come back. However, we have to be patient as Braves fans. Otherwise, you're just going to be angry. And why be angry about something that you can't control? There's plans to be made, and there's no reason to rush into things when it may not be worth it, okay? Would Santander be good? Yes, but he was looking for a 5-year deal. We don't need him for a 5-year deal. Especially if he's going to have to become a DH after this season, and we may have other plans for that. We don't really know that. So let's, take it easy and not worry about that, okay? So let's talk about shortstop. Listen, at some point, Braves fans have to radically accept that Orlando Arcia is going to be our shortstop, okay? We weren't able to get Willy Adames. That would have been nice, but he would have been too expensive. Listen, if we're not going to pay Dansby Swanson that money, we're probably not going to pay Willy Adames that money either. It's just the way it is. And quite frankly, we don't need to pay him that money. We have a good shortstop that needs to improve on his hitting, all right? He struck out way too much. Remember, we had a new hitting coach that came in. Hopefully he can work with Orlando Arcia, but guess what? And we knew this 2 years ago when Orlando Arcia first signed that 3 or 4 year deal. That was like 4 or 5 million a year. It was for him to be a shortstop that can play defense. Our lineup is good enough that we don't need Orlando Arcia to hit. I know people are freaking out that we need a shortstop to hit. You know what? Why we needed a shortstop to hit last season is because no one else was hitting. Okay, only Marcell Ozuna was hitting. Orlando Arcia wasn't doing that. Matt Olson came on strong late in the season, but in the beginning of the season, when people were really worried, he wasn't doing that. Riley was in and out of the lineup. We were playing people who had career averages under 200 at second base when Ozzy wasn't there, at third base when Austin Riley wasn't there. So we really have to take a step back and understand what's really going on. Austin Riley can hit. Matt Olson can hit. Marcell Ozuna can hit. Michael Harris can hit. Acuna, when he comes back, can hit. Now that what's our catcher's name? It's out of my mind. Sean Murphy. Now that Sean Murphy's going to be consistently behind the plate because we don't have d'Arnaud anymore, he is going to get in the groove. Remember, they were talking about Sean Murphy for MVP for about a month, along with Acuna. He has that ability. He was also hurt last season with an oblique. He's going to have a healthy offseason. He's going to be able to get strengthened. He's able to do that to be able to be the catcher and the hitter that we need. We don't need him to be the MVP kind of guy, but we do need better than what he was. And I don't think he was getting the amount of at-bats as he was last season to get to that spot to where he was balling out like he was. Not even close. I think he also had some bad luck on some of those hitting numbers, and he'll get there too. Okay, so be patient with those things. Ozzy Albies, he's a guy we know he can hit. Yeah, maybe a little bit streaky, but remember, he was a 30 home run guy. He was discussed as possibly the best second baseman in the game just a couple seasons ago. That's not just gonna go away. So people just need to be patient and let the hitters do what they do. And we got a good defensive shortstop. We got to trust that he's going to do that. Okay? Now, lastly, I know we want a starting pitcher. We have a lot of people in our farm system. Someone's going to have to step up. Last year we had Schwelly that stepped up, and he's going to seem like he's going to be a top of the rotation guy. Okay, so we have Sale, we have Schwelly, we have why am I forgetting all the pitchers' names? However, we have the people in our rotation that can be a good top four. And then Strider's going to come back. Now, his health is going to really depend on whether our rotation is going to be a top five versus just a top half of the league um, rotation. I'm hoping that he's going to come back. You know, he didn't have Tommy John surgery, so that's good. He just had a brace put in because he had a bone spur that was in his elbow. That was probably because of his last Tommy John surgery. But knowing that he did not have Tommy John is a good thing. Means that, you know, that the comeback may be a little bit easier for him, so we can slot him in and he can be that Cy Young kind of guy that people were expecting him to be. That Cy Young guy that was that guy during the spring training last season. And yes, I know it was spring training, but he was mowing down folks. We need one person to step up. I mean, and y'all know me. Y'all know me. I'm done with some of these retreads that we've thrown out there. I'm looking for AJ Smith-Shawver to step in and be that guy. That is my number 5 guy. He doesn't have to be great, but I need him to be a lot better than what he was, and I need him to be healthy. Because remember, he had one start last season against the Cubs that was really good. And he got hurt. And he never got another start in the regular season, and then ended up starting one game in the postseason, and we know how that went. All I'm asking for is for these Braves fans to be patient, okay? We need to be patient because we have the making of a really good ball club, okay? Just 2 seasons ago, and then 1 season ago, we were a 100-win team. No team was a 100-win team last year, and we were really hurt. I believe we can get there. We just have to trust Alex Anthopoulos to make sure he's doing what he needs to do, and also making sure that we understand that we're not going to be put in some bad situation. So stop thinking that there's going to be some big signing, especially if we really take a look at who's out there. Do we really want those people on the team? Do we really trust that they're going to be able to be that guy? I don't know. I don't know if Santander can replicate what he did last season. Last season was a career year. Do you think Teo Hernandez is going to be able to replicate what he did last year? And on top of that, why would he want to go away from the Dodgers? So there's a lot going on that we have to think about. And primarily, we don't want to be put in a bad situation in the future just because we want that excitement now, okay? Think about the long term, not the short term, and continue to trust Alex Anthopoulos, who has gotten us to the postseason. The postseason for the past 8 years. 7 years. It's 7 or 8 years. And trust that he'll do it again.
You're listening to The Slip with Brandon Baird.
Falcons talk. I don't know how long I'll be able to talk about this because it's just utterly frustrating, utterly ridiculous, utterly asinine that the Falcons did not make the playoffs. They went 6-3 in the first 9 games, and then proceeded to lose 4 straight. And then put themselves in a situation where late in the season against good teams, they had to have must-win games. Against a team like the Commanders, who are currently in the NFC Championship game, as well as a, quite frankly, surging Carolina Panthers team that was looking really good with Bryce Young, who they did lose to. And Bryce Young looked really good against the Falcons defense. But let me just get to what my feelings are about the Falcons missing the playoffs. That can't happen again. The Falcons have the talent. The Falcons have the coaching. The Falcons have everything they need to make it to the playoffs. Especially at a time where they were in the driver's seat. They controlled their own destiny and then just lost it. I can blame a lot on Kirk Cousins in this season. So much. I mean, you think about how many times he made a terrible throw in a situation where all we needed is 3 points. Think about in that Chargers game, if he just wouldn't have thrown a couple of those interceptions, and they were terrible interceptions, that the Falcons definitely would have won and would have been once again in the driver's seat to control their own destiny and make it to the playoffs. But they weren't able to do that. A couple things that I feel like went into this on why they missed the playoffs. One, they waited too long to make a quarterback change. It's good that Kirk Cousins led the Falcons to a 6-3 start. And I think that it was really good for him to get us there. But we saw towards even in some of those wins that I was like, his arm strength was not good enough to make certain throws. We were limited to just a certain range on the football field to where it's like he couldn't get the ball anywhere past 25 yards, as well as if you needed him to throw it to the long side of the field, he wasn't capable of making that throw. And if you needed a quick out, it was kind of a gamble on whether he was going to be able to make it there quick enough, or as you saw what happened in that Chargers game, he'd get picked off and it just led to an easy pick six. Now, I don't want to put it all on Kirk Cousins because part of that is the coaching staff. I don't care that Michael Penix was a rookie. You do what you need to do with the running game that you have and the smarts that you have to control the clock, run the ball, and let his arm do some work. And as he can grow within those games. The Falcons had one of the toughest schedules within those first 5 or 6 games. And they did what they needed to do. Remember, they got to win against the Eagles. They could have beat the Chiefs, right? They swept their division in the first 4 games, only to lose the last 2. And when you turn that season over and it starts getting a little bit easier, that is the perfect time to make that that quarterback change, and that's what the quarterbacks need, or that's what the coaches need to do. Raheem Morris did not do that. Now he's in a hot seat for this next season when it's like, yo, you shouldn't even be in a hot seat. You make it to the playoffs, even if you get your ass blown out in the first round, the wild card round of the playoffs, you're good going into the next season. You expect a little bit more, but you surely aren't in the hot seat. And right now, his seat is hot as hell because the coaching that he did was not good enough for that team in the way that they were made up. So many people look at the GM and thinking that he didn't do the job that he needed to do. I mean, honestly, he put the roster in a position where they could win. The players didn't show up. So many players did not show up when they needed to. I'd also question, especially with these hindsight 2020 people, that say, oh, this guy was chosen after this guy, or this guy was chosen after this guy. It's like, you don't know that when you're making the picks. And, you know, the picks need to have some sort of reasoning behind it. And you can't expect every pick to hit. I'm not saying that the GM is not culpable at all, because Terry Fontenot surely is culpable for a lot of things. However, I'm not with this 2020 right now, because you can tell from a 6-3 start that that team was good enough to make the playoffs. So I'm not. Let's not talk about the roster and the makeup of it. It's about the coaching and how they didn't have the guts to do what they needed to do, and that ended up hurting them. And now they're in the hot seat. Good luck next season. Sitting here right now, it's so frustrating because the Falcons had such high hopes before the season, and more than halfway in the season that they had good, high hopes to do some good, and they just weren't able to do it. If I'm not mistaken, they ended the season below 500. That's not okay. In a 17 game season, you have to end over 500 based on the start that you had, as well as the teams that you were playing after that. Now, the other person that deserves a lot of blame for the season is Young Wei Koo. He missed a lot of kicks that either put games in a tighter situation than that needed to be, or just put us in a situation where a field goal wouldn't help us, where we needed a touchdown, or where even if you just made it one of the two that you missed in a game. I keep going back to this Chargers game. I think that Chargers game was such a huge turning point in the Falcons season, about the quarterback play as well as the kicking game. And I can say that the kicking game was not good enough, because even when you were in a great position in the Commanders game, you still missed the field goal, and a field goal that was generally makeable for 95% of the league. We're the only person that couldn't make that kick, that didn't have the leg strength to make that kick. That's asinine. The kicking game wasn't good enough, and your kicking game needs to be on point. I'm not saying that you have to be 100% in the season. I am saying that when we're talking about field goals 35 and under, I'd say even 40 yards and under, you need to be 100%. The closer to the goal line that you get, the higher of an expectation of being 100% that I have. And we couldn't do that. It was astonishing. It was shameful. And they got to make big moves going into this postseason. They got to make big moves going into this offseason. And they also better hope that hiring that defensive coordinator that was the interim coach from the Jets, who was our linebackers coach when Dan Quinn was here, he better turn some things around on that defense, because I know the talent that's on that defense. I don't expect them to be a top 5. However, the same stuff hurt us over. We weren't running QB spies. QBs ran all over us. All QBs ran all over us. We weren't able to get sacks except for like a small portion of the year. We couldn't even get pressure except for that small portion of the year. And it just seemed like overall the scheme was not good. The scheme did not put our players in the best position for us to win and be good enough of a defense. I think these are very fixable things. However, we'll see in future episodes if they're able to accomplish this. This big thing of changing the scheme and getting the right people in here or not. Because this next season, I'm going to be more critical than I am now. And I hope I don't have to be. because those aren't the fun slips that I like to record.
You're listening to The Slip with Brandon Baird.
All right, for the final segment of this episode of The Slip, I'm going to talk about the Hawks. The Hawks are now 22-21. They just lost to the Detroit Pistons, who are right there along with them. I think they just jumped them to where, although the Hawks are in the playoff picture right now, they're just in a play-in. They need to be playing just a little bit better so that they can be in at least the top half of the play-in. So they only need to win one game rather than that bottom half. However, they're looking good. If they are healthy, I think they are a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference. And that's what we need to look towards, okay? The Eastern Conference. When we talk about the Western Conference, we're going to let them beat each other up because there's a lot of great teams over there. But let's talk about the Eastern Conference and what the Hawks can do there. And let's talk about the top 3 teams in the Eastern Conference. The Knicks, the Celtics, and the Cavaliers. When you look at the Hawks against those 3 teams, right now they're 7-2. Having a winning percentage against those top teams shows you what you're capable of. But here's what good teams need to start doing. They got to beat up on the teams that aren't good. You got to start being able to not blow these teams out, but consistently win against those teams that you have the talent to be better at. And, one of those teams is the Detroit Pistons, okay? It's just that simple. You got to be able to beat those teams. You got to be able to beat the Miami Heat. You got to be able to beat the Charlotte Hornets. Those are those teams that you got to beat. The Nets. And we're going to have a lot of games left against those teams, all right? We're only at the halfway point of the season. It's kind of amazing that we're at the halfway point of the season, but that's where we're at. And, it's so great that they were able to do what they did in the in-season tournament, because it gave them that taste of what it's like to really be in some, pressured games. Yes, they made the playoffs in the postseason in the past. However, no one really had big expectations of those teams. And they honestly did not have the talent or the players playing to the collection of what they could at that point. But this is where the Hawks are right now. They have probably the best point guard in the league right now. Okay? He's leading the league in assists with over 11 per game. When we're talking about a point guard that can also shoot the 3 really well, and although he's underperforming what he usually does, I think he'll get better as the season goes on. That is what a point guard is supposed to do. They also have another all-star in Jalen Johnson. All right? He is a monster in the paint, and he's a guy that's physical, a guy that can rise above people, and a guy that can go out and start getting 20 and 10. And really start getting 20, 10, and 5, because he's that kind of player. I think he's still growing into his body. One of the people in the main Atlanta-based Hawks podcast called this, 2 years ago. Christopher Park. Shout out to him. I'll plug his podcast in the comments and in the summary, because y'all got to check him out. He said he is going to be LeBron-like. Now, when you got to think about what LeBron-like is, he's not saying that he's going to be LeBron, no. But he's that big body that can shoot, that can be physical, that can rise above and do those things and get 20 and 10. He's still growing into his body. He's still growing into his game. But right now, he's playing at an all-star level. and there's still more that he can do. You look at him and say, wow, he's still learning, he's still growing, and he's that good. The Hawks have arguably the number one contender for Defensive Player of the Year in Dyson Daniels, a steal that they got from the New Orleans Pelicans. In that Dejounte Murray trade, I know people were really hating on the Hawks for doing it, but what they got back, it's looking really good. And getting a guy that's possibly a Defensive Player of the Year type, that is that point of attack guard guy, that's going to help the Hawks in the postseason, and it's going to help their defense throughout. You know, one of the biggest things in past Hawks teams, they couldn't play defense. They just didn't have that point of attack guy, and guys would just go after Trae Young. Now, Trae Young has improved his defense a lot, and Coach Quinn Snyder has done a good job of, you know, inserting some game plans that really help Trae Young as well. And lastly, you have a guy that is a contender for the Sixth Man of the Year. I don't know if he's actually going to win the Sixth Man of the Year, but DeAndre Hunter is finally playing like that top 10 pick, that lottery pick that he was, and what we expected out of him. It took a little bit. Okay, he's doing it right now. But let's look at everything that we have. We have possibly the best point guard in the league. We have a guy that's an all-star. We have a guy that is in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, and a guy that is possibly Sixth Man of the Year. And that's not even talking about Bogey. That's not talking about any of the centers. That's not talking about any of those young and upcoming players that are still going to learn and grow and find their role on the team. If the Hawks are able to get healthy and able to find their rhythm towards the playoffs, there's not going to be one team that wants to play them. All right, usually this is a point in the podcast where I typically take some topic that I'm really interested in, some current events, socio-political observation I may have, something that I want you to think about, just anything to where I find intriguing. I think that it should be known to more people, but I don't have that this time. Obviously, I haven't recorded a podcast in a while, so going into this season 4 of the Slip, I want to make sure I'm intentional about this stuff, make sure that I'm consistent, making sure that I'm doing what I want to do. Ultimately, I wanted this to be a weekly thing, and for me to put out my thoughts. And I'm going to try to uphold and do that. I'm also going to try to at least stream once a week. And not trying to do too much, not trying to say I'm going to do a slip in a man and a slip and stream all in 1 week, or I'm going to do it 3 days out the week. No. One stream, one podcast episode. We'll see if there's any more. That'll be bonus, extra. You know, I'm trying to control the things that I can control, and those are the things that I absolutely can control on a consistent basis. So as we move into this new year, as we move into this new season of the Slip, that's where we're going to go. So I hope you are going to be along for the ride. Of course, this has been the Slip, an Atlanta sports podcast for the true ATLian. I'm the host, Brandon Baird. You can follow me on Twitter at Bairdian_slip. You can also follow me on Twitch at BairdianSlip, no underscore there. We're going to do this and have a lot of fun. And as always, don't slip.